Hey everyone, Mystical Mark here. So this will be your weekly astrology forecast for the week of May 11th to the 17th of 2025. Now before we get into the charts for this week, if you are looking for any kind of a reading with me, those links are in the description below. So I do pre-recorded readings as well as live readings. You can book with me for one-on-one. We do it over Google Meet and you can get your reading that way. All right, and of course, any other ways to support me are all in the description below. If you're on TikTok, just go to my bio and go to my link tree. Absolutely everything is listed there for you. You can do that on YouTube as well, but you know, there's more room for links and stuff on YouTube. So yeah, anyways, so we can head on into the charts for this week. Before we get there again though, just as a reminder, I say this at the beginning of each video, my guidance has been and likely always will be, astrology is an energetic template conducive to certain things. Meaning, and of course I get stuff through intuitively as well, meaning that we have free will. So if I make a prediction for an event or anything like that or get guidance on that coming through, that is always subject to change. Why? Because we have free will, like I said, all right? So just keep that in mind. However, the vibe, the energies of the themes that are happening, so like planets and signs, like the energetic themes are still likely to be there. So, or well, they will be there. Sorry, I just keep looking at my camera doesn't want to focus and it's causing my brain to not. There we go. I'm focused now. Okay. So the energetic themes will still be there, okay? But it's, of course, the universe is infinitely creative. It's how we use them, etc. All right? So with all that being said now, let's jump into the charts for this week here. We'll start here. Oh, I don't even have the day right. Oh my God, there we go. We'll start here Sunday, May 11th. It's been a bit of a wild morning so far. So I've had a lot to do. I'm sorry if I seem a bit scatterbrained. Hopefully we can get through this. All right. So May 11th, Sunday, May 11th, we only have a couple minor aspects today to start off this week. However, we are heading into that full moon in Scorpio that will happen on the 12th. And of course, anything with Scorpio is going to be intense. So I feel like we're probably going to feel it already on the weekend, building to that point as we get to Monday there. Because it looks like it happens around... yeah, so 10:57 a.m. Central on Monday. So we're probably going to start to feel that really build on the weekend there, especially on Sunday. All right. Okay, so on Sunday here, we're going to have Mercury now in Taurus, in semi-sextile to Neptune in Aries. All right. So again, I feel like I'm getting the same guidance that I got last week regarding Neptune is like, okay, hold on. It's kind of like that unknown vibe. Neptune is always unknown, right? So we kind of feel into it to see if we can get... Hey, so what I'm getting is maybe a communication or awareness of something that has been hidden, hiding behind the veil, etc., that maybe is going to be coming through. This, okay, about a direction forward in some way, because we're dealing, Neptune is in Aries, it's a cardinal sign. We're looking to move forward. There's a lot of like forward movement here that I feel like, especially in the past couple videos that I've done regarding our own value, self-worth, etc. I feel like there's that vibe there. Mercury is in Taurus. Okay, what I feel like this is kind of grounding in that forward movement regarding maybe a behind the scenes plan, something that's been hidden, there's an opportunity here to move forward with the semi-sextile. I don't feel like this could be a negative shift to that semi-sextile where they're working against each other. It's possible because there's certain, you know, people and beings and stuff that will use this energy in a negative way to try to manipulate people, because Neptune, Pisces, that kind of stuff can be very manipulative, okay? It can be like the fog, where, you know, what you see is not always what you get, and they can be used in a very negative way. However, in a positive way, it could be used as like positive surprises, or something that's been hidden is now, you know, coming to light, and it allows us to maybe move forward in a certain way. All right, and that could be also an aspect as we head into this full moon in Scorpio for that aspect of a release. And this could be a major transformative release as well, since we're dealing with that Scorpio energy. Okay, so, and I feel like with Mercury here, it maybe isn't something that's been brought to our awareness before, but now it is. It's like a sudden aha. I kind of feel like what I talked about originally with Neptune coming into Aries, it's kind of like that awakening moment, because it's not so solidly Pisces anymore. Right? With Neptune in its home sign, it's very like it's extremely Pisces, extremely veiled, extremely whatever. But with Aries, it's kind of like, it's not as, that energy isn't as intense. I mean, it's still Neptune, it's still that vibe, but it's maybe things coming into more of an awareness. And again, this could deal with more of our aspect as well, our own identity, self-sovereignty, etc., as relating to our own value and worth. Now, Taurus can be quite stubborn. Mercury in Taurus can be very, saying it like, no, I want it this way, and regarding value and worth, etc. I still feel that stubbornness vibe. I believe I mentioned that in like last week's video surrounding that Mercury in Taurus. So yeah, that's kind of the vibe of that semi-sextile there. We're also going to have Mercury here in the biquintile to the south node. So again, I kind of feel maybe that's the vibe in this relation to this moving forward with this cardinal kind of energy with that Neptune in Aries, and maybe with that fixated Mercury there kind of grounding in that new awareness, that idea, right, that maybe kind of comes through with that. But with this biquintile here to the south node, we have to remember Mercury is ruling over the south node, as well as Mercury also rules Virgo, as well as Gemini, right? So this could be very much behind the scenes kind of stuff that has maybe been working, that is now coming through here with this. Maybe these energies are kind of working together, but this is also relating to a creative, maybe letting go of what we thought was practical, isn't really practical anymore, and that needs to be let go of so we can move in a new direction, right? When I talked about this nodal axis before, south node Virgo, north node Pisces, it's letting go of what we thought was practical, what we thought is, this is the way, this is how we have to do it, and moving into a new, completely unknown direction. Okay, so that's kind of that vibe on Sunday. This could be stuff with this biquintile here. This could be stuff like coming up that has been worked on in the past already. I kind of may be relating to that semi-sextile energy that I talked about, but it's stuff that could also be behind the scenes work as well, in order to let go of maybe what we thought was practical, kind of letting go of that stuff to be able to, ground in this new aspect through this new awareness that is coming through here. All right, so that's Sunday the 11th. Let's move on to Monday the 12th here, where we're going to have this full moon in Scorpio. Now, okay, I'm looking at my list of aspects here, and I'm like, all right, we got a lot to talk about on this one, maybe. So, with this full moon in Scorpio, what I feel like with the Scorpio is this is going to be very transformative. I feel a very strong Scorpio energy here. Now, the moon is going to be conjunct Juno, okay, within 2 degrees there. And of course, Juno relates to partnerships, contracts, could be business contracts, marriages, any kind of committed contract, committed kind of partnership in that way. And Juno's retrograde, and in Scorpio, that's facing what you got to face in those things in order to transform them. It could be healing and transforming them, but it could also be ending them as well. And this can relate to certain soul contracts and things too, right? And with the sun here in Taurus, like I said, relating to what I heard initially was like money. Money, and that could be maybe more of on a global scale regarding whatever those contracts or committed partnerships are, and maybe there is a strong release and transformation of those things and releasing of maybe old ways of doing that in a monetary form. However, this could also relate to, and okay, what I'm being drawn to now is the sun is also moving into conjunction to Uranus on this full moon in Scorpio. So this is very related to very much transformational and change. All right. And this is going to deal probably a lot with money, a lot with value, worth. As I talked in my previous 2 weeks, last 2 videos, so for the last couple of weeks, we're dealing with this Taurus energy, a lot of our own value and self-worth, etc., with Venus coming back into Aries and dealing with our own individuality and sovereignty within relationships versus the other, and allowing the other to do the same as well. Watch those videos if you want more on that. Okay, but that's maybe kind of still that vibe there, but there's a change that is occurring here that's releasing a lot of what hasn't worked for us, and we're coming into something that is new. And I say that even more, not just with the sun conjunct Uranus, where there's this aspect of change surrounding that in terms of value, worth, money, etc., in terms of committed partnerships, contracts, something along those lines that needs to be transformed, let go of, and released in some way. Those are kind of the major themes just with that full moon alone. However, we've got this aspect here with the sun trine the south node and in sextile to the north node, and with the moon here in trine to the north node and in sextile to the south node. Now that creates kind of like a rectangle aspect between that. I don't specifically remember its name. There's a lot of shapes in astrology. I believe that's the mystic rectangle. You can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, where we have the 2 sextiles and 2 trines there forming that rectangle in the chart. Now, with this aspect to the node, these are positive aspects, but again, oppositions and squares can be positive too. They're not just negative, but what they do is they push for change and resolution that needs to occur. That doesn't have to be negative, okay, but as we're dealing with trines and sextiles, it could be a lot lighter and easier. So maybe with this opposition through what's being forced to be released and changed here, we have more of this positive or lighter movement forward, as in releasing what is no longer working or no longer practical and helping us to move forward in the new direction, even if it seems unknown. Right? It just seems like, well, we got ahead here. You're kind of getting the details as you go, because that's kind of Pisces. You get it as you go, and you're going to go here, 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 all over the place, but you're where you need to be at the right time as you're going. Right? So that's kind of the vibe of this, is like this release to shift and transform into these new directions and release maybe what is no longer serving us, what is no longer practical in those ways. Because we have to look, the sun is in Taurus with the trine to the south node in Virgo. That's a very earthly, practical kind of stuff, right? So there's a release and a change of those kinds of things, whether it's practical, monetary, value, worth, those kinds of heavier things, and the transformation in terms of, you know, maybe what we've committed to, partnerships, contracts, etc., and how this is shifting and moving in a new direction here as we move forward. All right, we've also got Juno here on this full moon is going to be in quincunx to Chiron. So there's an integration that needs to occur here. This is very kind of Mars-ish energy, and it deals with the feminine aspect of this as well as the masculine aspect of this. All right, and now we have both energies within all of us. So everyone has both divine masculine and divine feminine energies, right? And that's regardless of sexual orientation, gender identity, etc. That is all still valid, of course, but we have both of the energies within us. Now, what I feel this is integrating. So what I'm kind of getting is on this full moon with this release and this transformation, this intense release and transformation that is likely to occur here. And regarding, you know, these partnerships, contracts, etc., there's an integration through this transformation and this change and possible death and endings of whatever those partnerships, contracts were. But there's a transformation, a healing that is occurring here, especially with Chiron in terms of ourselves, our identity, that kind of stuff. But it could seem frustrating that we have to release, that we have to transform, that we have to do shifts in this way. Because we're dealing with fixed energy here, right? We're dealing with the fixed sign of Taurus and the fixed sign of Scorpio. When we deal with oppositions and squares and stuff relating to fixed signs, it can feel like a crisis point. It can feel very tough to change, to move forward, right? And with Scorpio, I'm kind of being drawn to this aspect of Scorpio. People don't like Scorpio. But the reason why they don't like it is because they're afraid to look at their own shadow. They're afraid to look at their own self. They're afraid to face it in order to transform. And that's maybe that aspect of some of that fixed energy that, you know, people don't like change in a lot of ways, but it's necessary. Okay. But what I'm kind of getting at here is through this transformation and this release, there's an integration of the healing of these wounds that have to occur here regarding our own self, identity, sovereignty, individuality, etc., as we begin to move forward, as this release happens that allows us to continue to move forward, right? Mars here as well is going to be semi-square the south node and sesqui-square to the north node here in Pisces. So a sesqui-square is a super square. So Mars in Leo, this expression of like this masculine passion and drive. Okay, again, we're dealing with more fixed energy. And if you go back to watch all the way back to the new moon in Taurus, where it was this fixed grand cross energy, felt like this crisis point, and it's like, okay, no, we have to shift, we have to change. It's like we need to do this, right? All those oppositions, squares, etc. But it can feel tough, it can feel difficult, but it's like, I can't take it anymore, we got to do this. It's that kind of vibe. Okay, so again, more of this fixed energy. And remember, that new moon in Taurus is relating to this full lunar month until we get to the new moon in Gemini. And I've also talked about it can relate to this Pluto retrograde as well. Watch last week's video on that if you haven't seen what that's about. All right, so again, that new moon in Taurus, that vibe is lasting for this whole month, including regarding this full moon. So this is a transformative release on a lot of maybe those uncomfortable shifts and changes, or whatever that crisis point was, through, I think I called that video like seismic shifts on the new moon in Taurus, because it is, right? You're dealing with fixed energy, and fixed energy, when it changes, it's shifting from one fixated thing to another fixated thing. And it's kind of like this big, they're big shifts, right? It's not as flowing as like the mutable signs like Pisces, for example, or not as like gung-ho as like the cardinal signs like Aries. It's very fixed, and when it has to change, it's like, it's like moving a boulder from one end to the other, right? It's like it's like, okay, we got to do this because we got to move it, and you may be uncomfortable and it's going to be difficult, but it's something like that has to be done. That's the description of like those squares and oppositions when you're dealing with that fixed energy. Okay, so with this sesqui square to the North Node, this is more so passion and drive, maybe from more of a heart space. But what I feel with Leo is it's like bringing it more of like into the spotlight, into center stage. You have to remember the sun rules Leo, so it's highlighting that part of it. And like I said, that very passionate but very loving drive to move forward in the new direction. What I'm hearing as well is this is very creative, and we're dealing with Leo as well as Pisces. They're both creative signs in their own way. Okay, so this is a very passionate, creative shift forward in a new direction, with the semi-square to the South Node releasing what is no longer practical. So there's this masculine drive here, but I feel like it relates to, because Chiron is in Mars's sign of Aries, and with that quincunx to Juno there, conjunct the moon on this full moon in Scorpio, there's this transformation and this big, we're taking steps forward regarding this change and whatever needs to be released and transformed, specifically regarding contracts and commitments and certain things like that. Our own value, worth, this can relate to money aspects as well in terms of what those are. As we begin to move forward here, we're also going to have Mercury in Taurus now square Pluto as well. Pluto retrograde now on this full moon. And so we're dealing with stuff with this Pluto retrograde that we've already gone over in terms of what we know that we've needed to transform and change. Okay, Pluto is in Uranus's sign of Aquarius. We've got the sun conjunct Uranus here on this full moon. All right, or well, moving into conjunction to Uranus, so that energy is definitely there. And so with this square now, we may have more of a grounded awareness of what really needs to shift and change. And it's almost like this Taurus energy of like planting those seeds, grounding in that aspect of change, transformation that we know that has needed to occur, and that is kind of occurring now. That awareness, grounding in that awareness through these transformations and changes that have needed to occur and needed to make. So this Pluto retrograde, it is now like we're making these changes that we know that that have highlighted, that we've been focused on, that we've needed to change. Look at last week's video where I talk about this a bit more, as well as the previous one where I talked about that full moon, or sorry, not the full moon, the new moon in Taurus, that was in square to this Pluto energy as well. It was actually in a T-square to that Mars-Pluto opposition, with that opposition to Black Moon Lilith and Scorpio, creating a grand cross. So check that out if you want more information on that, because that energy is still highlighted and valid through this time, through this lunar month as well. So it looks to be a fairly intense full moon in Scorpio, which, fits the vibe of Scorpio with the full moon in Scorpio. So you're dealing with lots of aspects of Pluto with that Mercury square, and just a lot of change and stuff and moving forward, right? So yeah, that is Monday the 12th. Let's move on to Tuesday the 13th here. we're going to have Mercury in the opposition to Black Moon Lilith. So again, I feel like what I'm getting is that's also relating to that Pluto square as well. So this is creating like this T-square here that is happening on the full moon as well here. Okay, so, and with that opposition, this could be these changes that we know that we've needed to make from past experiences, etc., with that Pluto retrograde. But as it relates to where we have been outcasted, transforming and healing that. And this is good regarding our own value and worth, to what has come into our awareness through that, but also grounding that in. Like I said, we're dealing with this Taurus energy. It's grounding that in. We're moving from one fixated thing to another fixated thing. Okay, and this is dealing with where we've been outcasted, but transforming that and healing that. So with that Black Moon Lilith in Scorpio, that could be any part of our lives of where we've been outcasted in terms of that transformation. However, more specifically, dealing with Scorpio could deal with sex, sexuality, intimacy, the stuff that we need to face just in general in order to transform, etc. All right, and through that awareness, through that Mercury, remember Jupiter is still in Mercury's sign of Gemini. We've got the South Node here in Mercury's other sign of Virgo. So this is dealing a lot with the expansion of our awareness, as well as that release of what's no longer practical in our lives. And in terms of, where we've been outcasted in those areas, through that expansion of awareness and through some of those practical things, maybe in terms of where we've been taken advantage of or whatever, in terms of career, day-to-day life, or any types of those nitpicky things or any practical sense. And again, like I said, this could be anything, because as it relates to your chart, your own personal chart, this could be in like a certain house or have certain aspects for you, like whatever. Like this is going to be different for everybody, but I'm just saying that these are the general energies that is occurring here. Okay, so with this opposition, like I said, is pushing for the balance and resolution here in terms of, like I said, what's coming through regarding our own value and worth and our awareness of that. What is that has come into our awareness? Look at my previous 2 astrology videos for the past 2 weeks for more information on that. But yes, with this T-square to Pluto in terms of the changes and transformations that are needing to occur here and possibly heal where we've been outcasted in terms of those things in our lives of where we need to make those changes, right? So that is Tuesday the 13th here, and I feel like that is going to be relating to that full moon energy as well and highlighted there as well. All right, so let's move on to Wednesday the 14th. We're going to have Venus here approaching the end of her shadow period. All right, Venus comes out of shadow this week, so approaching the end of her shadow period, now in that sesqui-square to Juno. So what I feel like this is with Venus in Aries, initially gone retrograde in Aries, like I said previously, dealing with that aspect of the self versus other people within relationships, etc. All right, and honoring our own individuality and sovereignty, but also doing the same thing to honor that with others as well. Okay. And so with the sesqui-square to Juno, dealing with those specific partnerships, contracts, business contracts, etc., we're really pushing for that transformation that needs to occur here within that as we approach the end of this Venus shadow, where she's going over these old spaces, old things. So the Juno is still retrograde. So these energies are kind of playing off of each other regarding what has been gone over, or what is currently being gone over, regarding these transformations and changes that need to occur. With that sesqui-square is like a square and a half. So it's strongly pushing for that resolution, something that can't be swept under the rug any longer regarding our own individuality, sovereignty, etc., as it deals with others through this, and others regarding those contracts, commitments, partnerships as well, that either need to be transformed or come to some kind of an end. All right, we also have Jupiter here in quincunx to that Juno retrograde as well. This Juno stuff is really being highlighted here because we also have the Sun coming into exact opposition to Juno on this day too, as it's relating to that full moon in Scorpio. So this is very much highlighted. Contracts, partnerships, commitments that are changing and transforming this week. So with that Jupiter quincunx, whatever is coming to our awareness, as I talked about previously in this video and in previous other astrology videos that I've done surrounding the integration of what needs to be transformed and changed here. Stuff is coming to light with this Juno retrograde in terms of commitments, partnerships, how we've committed to other people, those kinds of things, etc., that either needs to end or be transformed in some way with this retrograde in Scorpio, and it's been highlighted on that full moon with, all those aspects that I previously talked about, etc. But this is really expanding what needs to be integrated through our awareness in terms of the transformation of these commitments, partnerships, etc. with that. Okay, and of course the sun in opposition, highlighting finding that balance regarding our own value and worth, and this can of course relate to money issues as well surrounding these partnerships, contracts, etc. that need to be transformed and changed. However, it can relate to our own individual value and worth, as well as that comes through as Venus, the ruler of Taurus, as well as the ruler of Libra, but the ruler of Taurus is in Aries, focusing on that identity aspect of self, but honoring that within others as well, which of course leads to changes in commitments, contracts, etc. All right, we also have the sun here in semi-sextile to Jupiter. So there is an expansion of this awareness of our own value and worth and the changes that need to occur with that as the sun approaches Uranus in Taurus here with that conjunction, that opposition to Juno, with all the Venus stuff, etc. This is just highlighting more and more and more of what I have already said. Okay, and this is highlighting the aspects of value and worth and the expansion of the awareness in that, the expansion of that, communication of that, but it's more of like that awareness of that as this continues to go through here and as things are needed to be relooked at, transformed and changed, etc. Okay, so that is Wednesday the 14th. Let's move on to Thursday the 15th here, where we're going to start off with the sun in semi-sextile to Chiron. So again, we're dealing still with these values of our own value and self-worth, but as it can relate to money as well as that relates to our independence too, right? So, and with that semi-sextile there to Chiron, healing those wounds of our individual aspects of value, worth that can relate to money, etc., and our own uniqueness and individuality as the sun is conjuncting Uranus, the ruler of Aquarius, that deals with that, but also the changes that need to occur surrounding these things of where we've been wounded before in the past in terms of our self-identity, etc. As which this is highlighting our own value and worth, and could be even money issues, etc. that is coming through here, with still that opposition to Juno in terms of contracts, commitments, etc. that maybe need to be transformed and changed through all of this. All right. We've also got on this day Mercury here in semi-square to Jupiter. So now this is that semi-square, it's pushing for that expansion of awareness here with Jupiter in Gemini and Mercury in Taurus of value, worth, money, material things, all that stuff being highlighted through this, grounding in that new stuff as this awareness really begins to come through, especially with Mercury in that opposition to Black Moon Lilith. We're beginning to see and expand our awareness of our own value and worth. And we're not going to, fuck with bullshit anymore. We don't want to fuck with bullshit anymore. Especially with the Scorpio stuff, full moon in Scorpio, Black Moon Lilith in Scorpio. Scorpio doesn't fuck with bullshit. Okay? Scorpio doesn't fuck with bullshit. Okay? It's not a bullshitter. It's going to show you how it is. And with that, where you've been outcasted, but having a look and recognizing our own value and worth and expanding that awareness and communication of that, etc., as this energy goes on, right? We're also on this day going to have the sun in trine to the south node and in sextile to the north node here in Pisces, all right? So again, as this is highlighted, it's same as what I mentioned regarding that full moon in Scorpio. It's just now this energy is peaking here with that trine to the south node and sextile to the north node, right? Highlighting this path forward regarding our own value and worth and what has been released in terms of no longer working in that regard and transformed with that full moon in Scorpio as we begin to release what is no longer serving us in terms of what's no longer practical as we head into this opportunity here with this sextile to head into this new direction that is likely completely unknown to us, right? But we still know that we need to go there. We're getting the breadcrumbs, we're following the breadcrumbs, but we're not fully seeing the end result, but we just have to trust to continue on as we get there because we know that we need to change. This is honoring our own value and worth, uniqueness, individuality here with that sun in conjunction to Uranus. All right, so that's Thursday the 15th. Let's move on to Friday the 16th here. So we're going to have this Mercury now in semi-square to the north node, where are we? Yeah, Mercury in semi-square to the north node and in sesqui-square to the south node. So with that sesqui-square, especially Mercury rules the south node, is really pushing through this expansion of awareness with, that semi-square to Jupiter as well, releasing what is not serving us in terms of our own value, worth. This could be money stuff, etc. Mercury is still in opposition to Black Moon Lilith. Okay, where we've been outcasted, but transforming and healing that, understanding value and worth, and releasing the practical things that are not serving us in those ways. With that opportunity here to push in this new direction in Pisces into the unknown. This may be unknown to us, especially when we're healing, where we've been outcasted in a myriad of different ways, and really looking at transforming and healing that. If that's been happening to us for so long, like if you look at certain maybe abuse situations or people being taken advantage of in some ways, when you go to get out of those situations or you're taking action to get out of that, it can be very difficult to know where you're going because you've been stuck in such a negative vibe for so long that you're not used to maybe what other people are used to in terms of normal lives, right? In terms of people that are used to setting boundaries and, being dicks when they need to be dicks. They're kind of used to moving in that direction, but maybe if you're not used to that in terms of where you've been outcasted, but now you're heading in that direction, that can seem unknown to you, right? That's kind of the vibe that is coming through with this energy here. All right. But with Mercury, it's expansion of that awareness of really what needs to get let go of in a practical way in terms of moving forward into the unknown. And that can be difficult for Mercury, as this Pisces energy is like that veil. It's the unknown. Mercury maybe wants to know the deals, wants to communicate, wants to know certain things. But in this case with Pisces, you just have to trust in a lot of ways as well, right? Mercury here is also in the semi-sextile to Venus, which is now out of shadow. So it's around midnight on the 16th, 15th, heading into the 16th, right? That central time that Venus leaves shadow. So that Venus retrograde is now kind of fully complete. Okay, and we're beginning to move forward. And my tummy's a grumbling here. But yeah, we're looking to move. Where Venus is moving forward. Okay, so we're out of that retrograde stuff and we're moving into this new space of the sovereignty of independence as it relates to others, and honoring that in others as well. All right, so, and with that semi-sextile here, understanding our own value and worth through that, but understanding the value and worth of others as well, and honoring that individuality, etc., as we begin to move forward here. All right, so still kind of the same vibe that I've been talking about for a while, all the way since that new moon grand square in Taurus, and also in last week's video, etc. All right, let's move on to Saturday the 17th, where we're going to have that exact Sun conjunct Uranus, as well as the Sun is going to semi-square Venus. All right, and with that conjunction to Uranus, I feel like this is relating as well to our own value, worth, uniqueness, individuality, but as it relates to us being able to express that within our relationships as it relates to other people. Excuse me. Okay, so when I burp like that, that's the guides usually saying pay attention. Okay, so as it relates to other people, honoring our own value, worth, etc., but also honoring that with others as well. But maybe that relates to where we've been put upon, outcasted, etc., and really learning to honor that we have our own uniqueness, individuality, and honoring that own value and worth within that. Of course, this can relate to intense change as well, as it relates to the previous energy I talked about with that grand square on that new moon in Taurus, whatever this release is on this full moon, surrounding these aspects of change, grounding that in that needs to occur here with this Sun conjunct Uranus in Taurus, especially since Pluto is in Uranus' sign of Aquarius. Pluto was now retrograde. This is dealing with the changes that we know that we've already needed to make, and now grounding that in, looking at that transformation and honoring our own value and worth outside of and moving on those old things that were no longer serving us any longer, that need to be transformed and changed in some way. All right, and as it relates to this aspect of our own identity, our own self and identity regarding other people, but it's allowing us to be ourselves in relationships and not bending over backwards for others, or not having to sacrifice or compromise so much in the sense of others, but also honoring that for others as well as ourselves. All right. We're also, so as it relates to the Sun semi-square Venus, but obviously we're going to have that Venus in semi-square to Uranus as well. So that vibe is kind of there through all of that. We're also going to have Mercury here in square to Mars. So again, I feel like this passionate expression of this self, this new identity in terms of our value and worth, and the awareness of that, and maybe the communication of that. So with that Mars square Mercury, I was going to say harsh communication. I don't really feel like it's that. I feel like it's this expression of this new self, of this, and I talked about previously in other videos, this new masculine aspect of ourselves, or this new identity coming online, but this true expression of self or identity in our own value and worth, and understanding our own value and worth, and kind of really learning to express that through this expansion of awareness. Could be expressing through communication, as we're dealing with Mercury here, but through that expansion of awareness that we've got through this Mercury, as well as through this Venus retrograde and now Venus's left shadow, through this expression of that in this Leo energy, maybe from a more heartfelt space, but it's through this understanding of that expression of self and loving oneself through that expression, and understanding our own value, worth, etc. through that. All right. And I believe that is it for this week. All right, let me bring it back to myself here. So, if you have made it this far in the video, please leave a purple heart in the comments to let me know that you're a real one. And I hope to see you all in the next video. So thank you all for watching again. Take care. Bye.